Close to 30 women have publicly accused Donald Trump of sexual misconduct. The allegations span decades and include anything from harassment to assault. Now, one of the women who've spoken out about their experiences is hoping he'll face the consequences. Closing arguments were heard today in the civil case of columnist E.Jean Carroll against the former president. She accuses him of raping her in a department store and of harming her reputation by calling her a liar when she came forward. Over the two-week trial, the plaintiff presented evidence aimed at exposing a pattern of predatorial behavior, replicating an image Trump himself has proudly cultivated over the years. And that might well get him into hot water now. At the trial, Carol's lawyer contrasted her client's testimony with Trump's deposition. She noted that Trump, who had derided Carol as not his type, was shown a photograph of Carol from over 3 decades ago and repeatedly misidentified her as his second wife, Marla Maples. Let's listen in.
I don't even know who the woman. Let's see. I don't know who. It's Marla.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla, yeah. That's my wife.
Which woman are you pointing to? No,
that's
here.
Carrol.
Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was E.Jean Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
Point, your wife.
And the woman on the right is your then wife,
I don't know.
Ivana?
This was the picture.
Ivana.
I assume that's John Johnson. Is that
That's Carrol.
Carol? Because it's very blurry.
For more on Trump's trial, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Amin Esif. Amin, why is this a civil case and not a criminal case?
Well, essentially because E.Jean Carroll did not go to the police in late 1990s or in the 1990s when the alleged incident occurred. She instead waited until 2019 to go public with this. So that means the statute of limitations had expired for a criminal case. She couldn't even have brought a civil case against Trump except for a law passed in, just recently in New York State that allows adult survivors of sexual assault to file civil suits against the perpetrators of that sexual assault. This passed just last year, took effect in November, and within hours, E.Jean Carroll had submitted this lawsuit against Trump.
And the burden of proof here is different, isn't it?
That's right. For a criminal case, you have to prove that beyond any reasonable doubt that the sexual assault occurred. That's what the jury has to say at the end. With a civil trial like this one, is just suing Trump, the jury just has to believe that it's the most likely scenario. So the burden of proof is a lot lower in this case, which could be bad news for Trump.
Mm-hmm. So what have we learned during the past 2 weeks?
Well, you know, not so much that we didn't know before the trial. E.Jean Carroll's case depends largely on her own testimony. She was the only witness of the alleged sexual assault. What we did see, though, was testimony from 2 of her friends. One of the friends described this phone call that she called this friend right after the alleged assault occurred. Very emotional. She was distraught. Her friend actually encouraged her to go to the police saying, "You were raped. You need to report this criminally." But Carol testified herself that she was worried that this would ruin her career, ruin her life if she came out against this famous New York tycoon. So she decided not to go to report this to police back then. That was the thinking behind it. And this was backed up by 2 people who said they received calls from her after the incident occurred. So that's what's the new information that's come out of this trial so far on her side. As far as Trump, he did not testify in court himself. They called no witnesses on his behalf. They're basically relying on the argument that it's he said, she said, and the only thing that Trump has contributed was this deposition that we heard clips from. This is a pre-recorded cross-examination from lawyers. So again, didn't appear in court. I was actually at the opening of this trial in New York City, and everybody was waiting to see if he would make a sudden appearance, but that did not happen. Only Carol arrived on the scene.
I think it's worth mentioning that 2 witnesses were also brought up by Carol who testified to having had similar experiences with Trump there in the past. Now, the plaintiff's lawyer argued that Trump acted as a witness against himself. We heard a bit of that before we started the interview there. How damaging could the remarks he made in his deposition become for him?
Well, most observers say that his deposition certainly didn't help him. We saw him mistake E.Jean Carroll for his ex-wife. That's a problem to even have a photo of them together because he said he did not know her. Now, all of his argument rests on this idea that he doesn't know her, that it's completely made up, that the alleged incident not only did not occur, but he never actually encountered this woman. That's certainly not true if she seems so familiar to him that it looks like his ex-wife. He also made statement regarding the Access Hollywood tapes, which, if you remember, it was recorded in 2005, but it came out in 2016, right before he was elected president. It did not affect his election because he won that election. But what he said in those tapes was that he admitted to groping women, and he said this was kind of a privilege awarded to stars, and he considered himself a star, so admitting that he groped women, and that certainly does not help you when you're making a deposition saying that you're innocent of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm. If found guilty by the jury, what could be the consequences for Trump?
Well, this is really interesting. The consequence is that he would be legally liable for sexual assault. We're looking at in the millions of dollars that he would have to pay for retribution to E.Jean Carroll. But Trump is not a poor man, so the fact that this does not contain any criminal charges probably puts his mind at ease because, you know, he's been accused of things like this. He's admitted to groping women himself. So I think for Trump, his reputation is the biggest thing at stake in this trial.
Yeah. These are not the only legal troubles he faces. We have the criminal case in New York, and we also have an investigation in the state of Georgia. And there are signs that this investigation in particular is gaining traction. What can you tell us about that?
Right. It's been a 2-year investigation into alleged meddling in the election in Georgia on the part of Trump and his team. After 2 years, they're finally ready, perhaps, to file charges against certainly several Republicans close to Trump, but maybe even Trump himself. Now, this goes back to the close election in Georgia where several things happened, and this is what the investigation is looking into. They've alleged in part that a team of people around Trump had conspired not only to influence the election by setting up bogus electors to send electoral votes for Trump, even though Biden won the state by a narrow majority. But they're also looking at a phone call he made to Raffensperger. He's the Secretary of State of Georgia, in which Trump asked him to find votes for him so that he could win the election there. And the charges might be racketeering. We're also looking at illegal access to voter information. So these are all things that are in the air right now. We have to see what the Attorney General of Fulton County in Georgia is going to actually bring against Trump, but that could be coming up in the next few days or weeks.
I mean, is any of this likely to derail his path toward the Republican presidential nomination?
I think that's why so many people are watching this trial. It certainly would be the first time he or any former president or would be legally liable for sexual assault, which is a serious charge here. But just judging from the fact that in 2016, the Access Hollywood tape came out just a month before the election, he won that, this seems unlikely that his hardcore voters are going to turn against him. So I don't think it will derail his chances. But what's interesting is that fewer and fewer women have been voting for Trump. In the last election, only 42% of women voted for Trump, and this is really serious for him. If he doesn't get a majority of women on board here, then he could be looking at, if he runs for president, if he makes it that far, he could be looking at a loss here because of all these trials put together.
Washington correspondent, thank you so much.